Greetings, everyone. I am Dr. Noni Davis. Oh, my hair is looking crazy right here. I'm so sorry about that. Anyway, and I am coming to you from St. C Academy. Um, I am a legacy owner. This business was passed on to me through my parents. We all started St. C Academy in 1996, and then they retired. And so here I am. So we've been here for 30 years, and this month, this Friday, we will do our presentation of Africa Day. And so I've been going through some of the topics that they are covering. We're learning about African American inventors across the diaspora. We're not just limiting to America or just Africa, but we're trying to include everybody. We also are working on artists. We're doing revolutionaries, which is the topic that I'm talking about today, architects, and I'm trying to think what was the third one. We did architects, engineers. Anyway, my brain. But we are, at any rate, the children are learning these different topic areas, and we're using AI to create little mini videos of what they are going to say and do. And then we have a little potluck. And so we start at 10 o'clock over at Lion Park, and it's going to be on Friday, and it's going to be really great. So today I wanted to focus on Tucson literature because I'm still stuck on revolutionaries and just trying to give information about that some people may not know about two who were pretty prominent. Um, Toussaint Louverture and Marcus Garvey. A lot of people know about these particular men, but there's some updates in Marcus Garvey's story, and then Toussaint Louverture. I learned some things that I didn't realize about him, but there's this connecting thread of I mean, when I talked about Hoodoo Month, I didn't know that I was going to also discover that a lot of these people were practicing doctors. And whenever you see that thread of someone practicing or being a healer or having any kind of spiritual connection, they were practicing some African traditional stuff. Anyway, so today I'm going to focus on Toussaint Louverture. And we know he was born May 20th, 1743, to enslaved parents in Haiti. And his father, they said, was the son of a West African prince from an area called Alada, and Alada is located in Benin. So, okay, so we've got that Ifa Yoruba influence there. And his father's name was Gal Gano. I could be mispronouncing it. When he was a child, Toussaint demonstrated an exceptional intelligence and was allowed to read and write by his enslaved owners, who they considered was progressive. But if you own somebody, are you progressive? Anyway, so he was allowed to read, and because he demonstrated a lot of leadership and, like I said, incredible intellect, they made him the chief steward on the plantation. And this was a sugar plantation. So that was one of the most brutal forms of enslavement because the average person, only lived like 7 years, because I didn't know until I did some research that and learned from Howard French's book uh, 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 um, that these people had to it required a lot of manure, a lot of nitrogen for the sugar to grow, and so people were literally in poop uh, to cultivate the soil to grow sugar cane. So people were not living very long. And so it was brutal. And so everything, eventually he was freed in 1776. Is some kind of nod to, the 1776 freedom from Britain in America, this, Independence Day or whatever. And he got married in 1982 to this woman named Suzanne Simone Baptiste, and they had three children: Placide, Isaac, and Saint Jean. There were a lot of rebellions amongst enslaved people from the moment they got here to, right through, yeah, well, the 1960s. Well, I guess we could say even with um, uh, George Floyd's thing, we are still in our protest mode. Um, but between 1731, they said they estimated from between 1731 and 1832, uh, there were major revolts occurred at least once every 2 years and could last for up to 15 years, which we noted last week when I was talking about Queen Nanny, that she was engaged in a battle with the British for 15 years. So in the US alone, they said nearly 300 happened between the 1600s and the 1700s. And they don't really calculate the ones that happened after that, but I've heard that there were as many, if in total, as many as 1,000 rebellions just in the United States alone. Enslaving people was never tenable, and these rebellions were on land on the continent of Africa, on water, and I talked about some of those rebellions that happened at sea, and throughout the Caribbean, and then on land right here in the United States. So in 1791, on August 22nd, enslaved Africans in Haiti led a rebellion on Saint Domingo. And here I have these pictures of Saint Domingo. Let's see. So this is Haiti, and a lot of people know the map. You got Haiti here and Dominican Republic here. The Dominican Republic was Santo Domingo. And so they led a rebellion, and in the first response to in direct response to the French Revolution. So the Africans are like, well, wait. So poor French people in France are fighting for their freedom. Oh, we're gonna fight for ours too. So anyway, that's what they did. So imagine an African here and that Frenchmen were killing rich Frenchmen and demanding their freedom. And so of course they were like all about demanding their own freedom as well. So Africans began resisting as well and determined to gain their own freedom. And by attacking plantations, and they were burning these plantations, they were killing their owners, they were destroying their lives because they had been suffering under the abuse of rape, of murder, of overworking, poor nutrition, and just this complete irreverence for African life and African humanity. So Baba Toussaint, according to biography.com, made sure, and I never heard this, that the first thing he did was make sure his family was safe uh, of in on the side on the what on one side of the island, and then he allowed his owners, or his previous owners, because he did get free, but he went back and found his previous owners and put them on a boat. And I don't know how true that is, but this is what they said in biography, and I'm just sharing that. It needs to be, I need to confirm that. So he was an adept at African and Creole languages, and he also had learned African and medical techniques. Huh. Oh, African and indigenous people's techniques. And so he served as a physician. And I didn't know that he was considered like a medical person, a doctor. So that was my new information. And this, because he was able to do this and he was able to care for soldiers when he finally did join the war, the revolution on the side of the Spanish, he was taking care of soldiers. And so after a while, they made him, he was given the charge of 600 formerly enslaved Africans and eventually 4,000. And one of whom was Jacques Dessalines, who eventually aligned himself with Toussaint. Now, Europe was chaotic during this time because everybody was saying, no, we ain't doing. All the colonies were rising up and everybody was fighting. And so, yeah, Africa, Britain was going through turmoil with the colonies. France's colonies were fighting. Everybody was up in uproars. And this environment became a chess match. And the America's freedom became a tool to encourage Africans to join forces against colonizers. And so one of the things we've learned is that even here in the United States, that the British, there were more Africans fighting, a significant number, because I think they said only about 7,000 African Americans fought for the American Revolutionary War, wherein there were like 11, 12,000 who for the British. And so that was happening everywhere, even in France. Spain would say, "Hey, we're gonna free you, and so you work with us. We're gonna do this for you." And then France would say, "Oh, wait. If you do this for us, we're gonna do the same thing." So they were dangling freedom as a tool of drawing people in to fighting these wars. So Britain, like I said, Britain used it against the English colonies. So when France declared Africans free, Toussaint changed sides. So at first they were fighting for the Spanish, but the French said, "Okay, well, we'll let you be free if you come and fight for us." And so now France had to fight Spain and Britain with the help of reinforcements from Africans. But Toussaint Louverture was uh, given a lot of the credit for defeating the Spanish speaking Santo Domingo, and he captured this capital city. Santo Domingo was the capital city of what's today is the Dominican Republic. And then he used his knowledge of medicine and his environment to wait until the spring. So I don't know if I ever shared this, but one of the things that Africans knew was their terrain, where they lived and what to expect as these seasons change. And so they knew that in the spring, these British soldiers, white people, did not have any immunity to malaria. And so these mosquitoes was going to do something for them. And a lot of these people just died out, and they died from malaria. These soldiers were just wiped out by that, and ended up having Britain had to eventually withdraw. And so that was how that ended. But Toussaint eventually still had to fight on another front, and this was mulattoes. A lot of mulattoes, even though they were black and mixed race or whatever, they were, well, I don't like they had parents from two different ethnicities or whatever, but because race is a made-up construct. Anyway, they owned slaves. They could own slaves, and they wanted their slaves back. So now Toussaint had to fight them. And eventually squell domestic rebellions by the mulattoes who were free, but they wanted their slaves. Like, no, we ain't going back to that. And so it looks like what happened was that this turned out to be a severely flawed attempt. And not only did, when Dessalines joined in, Dessalines said, "Oh, y'all want your slaves back?" He tried to decimate the mulatto population. I was like, "Damn, on, he was not playing with them." And so let me see, do I have a picture of him? Of the two of them. So yeah, this is Dessalines. And this is, oh, where is it? What happened to the picture? Okay, there it is. Dessalines and Toussaint. And right here. All right. So Dessalines was not playing. Jean-Jacques was not playing. So at any rate, so they Baba Toussaint created a new government and declared slavery an end to slavery, and emancipated everybody, and they all got citizenship. Now, one of the things he did have to do is because they needed to continue the economy. Haiti had to be in a situation where they had to okay, look, France, all right, we have whooped your butt, but we need you, pardon my French, we need you to be friends. And we're going to continue this sugar trade, but we're going to be the ones that are in charge of it. So he made everybody go back to the work on these sugar plantations. And so I was like, oh, how crazy. But Toussaint, Napoleon kind of got in there in the late 1790s or whatever. And he was like, we're not doing this, Tucson. Y'all gonna be back. We're reinstating slavery. And Tucson said, no, we're not. And so that led to something else, and because Napoleon really didn't have any a bank account for this to resist. This was all ego because he had literally bankrupted France and was forced to sell that space. Well, I think I've shown that before. The the Louisiana Purchase. I'm trying to remember what was it that I was doing. I was doing some kind of project, but he forced America. He forced France to sell that Louisiana Purchase, and that thing went all the way up to Mexico. I mean, no, from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up to to Canada, and I think it spread from like Ohio all the way over to Montana, and so it's a huge piece of land that Napoleon had to sell because he had bankrupted these wars had bankrupted France because of his very poor military strategies. Anyway, but yeah, government, yeah, from Missouri to Colorado, that's where it was, and so from Mexico to the Canadian border, so it was big, it was huge. But even though he did that, he decided I got to find a way to get Napoleon. So he pulled out his trick bag and tried to regain control of Haiti, but he never did. But he did. I mean, he never did regain control. That was out of the picture. But he did manage to trick. He got his brother-in-law to convince Toussaint that they were going to do a peace treaty, and just said, "Come down and meet us at the French quarters to discuss it." And when Toussaint arrived, he was arrested and eventually died from pneumonia and starvation. So they literally starved him to death in 1803. But Dessalines rose to power. And with the help from the mulattoes and everybody else, because they were not going to go back to this foolishness, because the mulattoes, Dessalines had already messed up the mulattoes, and they were like, okay, we whatever you say. And let's see, so they banished France from the island and made Haiti the first Black independent nation in the Western Hemisphere in 1804. So, and that was the end of colonial rule. That was the end of colonial rule in Haiti, because Dessalines was the man. Of course, he made himself like an emperor or something like that, so it all went to his ego too. But the problem, we all know that Haiti is still under attack because how dare they decide they want to be free. But anyway, so now I wanted to talk about Marcus Garvey, and Marcus Garvey is, his story is also kind of amazing and sad at the same time. And most of us know who Marcus Garvey is. That's Marcus Garvey, handsome guy, that's a serious outfit. And then, of course, he's from Jamaica, and we really need to pray for Jamaica right now, because I tell you, they've been hit by. They said this is going to be the worst hurricane of the century. I'm like, it's only 2025. Oh my God, what is coming? If it's we're only 25 years in, but they said the water is getting warmer, and these corporations are crazy. They don't give a daggone about the earth. They're gonna create bunkers and all kinds of foolishness and think that we're gonna have to live above the earth, but they don't know. The earth is gonna get them too. Anyway, so everyone knows about Marcus Garvey and his inspiration to African Americans and folks throughout the diaspora. And he was another one who was not playing. Marcus Garvey was born in Santa Ana Bay in Jamaica on August 17, 1887. And his father was an intellectual. They said he had a massive library. And so this in Marcus Garvey was his 11th child. So he was like raised around books. And so I was like, oh, that's why he had this amazing command of the language. I mean, it laid the foundation of intellectual curiosity and critical thinking for the youngest of this family. So that made so much sense. And I didn't know that. So that was a really interesting fact. He became an avid defender of those unjustly treated because of their racial status, which white people created because there was no black and white until Europeans came along. And he observed the exploitation of African people in Central America and the Caribbean. And they said that when he was a child, he led a strike. I can't remember what the strike was for, but he was working for, I think, somebody, a printer or something, or some kind of company. And he was engaged in when he was a teenager and leading strikes as a teenager. Okay, I see you, Marcus. You were showing us who you were. And he probably could out talk everybody. So, they humbled everybody. So, but he observed a lot of exploitation of African people in Central America and the Caribbean. So he traveled to different islands and and I think he even went to London. And he between 1910 and 1912, and so he was working in Panama, and he also worked in Costa Rica. So he witnessed a lot of exploitation that these Europeans were exploiting Africans in particular. And he was working on a newspaper as the editor, and he was publishing this information about the treatment of the folks. And so these experiences formed his anti-colonial position, because he said, this don't make any sense. You don't have to treat people like this, but this is what they were doing. And this is how he began to form this Pan-African worldview of loving yourself, of appreciating who you are, celebrating your blackness, and even this Pan-African view. Because he said, hey, they're mistreating us in the Caribbean, they're mistreating us in America, and wherever we go, and there's this exploitation of our people. And so these experiences formed his, like I said, anti-colonial perspectives and influences Pan-Caribbean, Pan-African views. And he realized that Africans and those in the Americas were facing horrific treatment wherever Europeans were. So this is what led to the formation of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, which he formed in 1914. After he returned to Jamaica, because remember, he was 1910 to 1912. He was in Central America, and he was in Panama. He was in Costa Rica. He was working in several places in the Caribbean, and so then in 1914, this is when he did the Universal Negro Improvement Association. In 1916, he moved to Harlem, New York, and traveled all over the country, speaking to Black audiences with inspirational messages urging Africans to love themselves. And he began to draw some criticism, of course, from, those folks who were his contemporaries, and this would be W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. They were like, this Negro out here telling people all this stuff, and they thought he was ignorant, but he wasn't. I don't know that I didn't see that he actually had gotten a formal education. But if you are living in a house that's packed full of a library, like they said, his father had an extensive library. He was in school. And he learned to be prolific. They said he would draw huge crowds, because he was an amazing speaker and very charismatic. And so his popularity spread through among African Americans. And WB got Du Bois was a little bit like, what is he doing? And Booker T. Washington was like, this, why y'all listen to this man? But we have to understand that this was, different leaders attract different groups. I believe that what happened with Marcus Garvey, the reason why they didn't go after Booker T and W.B. W.E.B. Du Bois as much is because they were talking about education. They were talking about, skills and stuff like that. But they weren't talking about repatriation to Africa. And we know these white people were like, back to Africa? Have y'all lost your mind? No, we need y'all here to do our menial labor. And, we might let a few of you all learn how to read and write and all of that. But back to Africa? Oh, no, 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 you're not going back there. And so I believe that that was the reason why he became a target. Now, this is just me talking. But he was promoting financial independence, which was problematic. So, and then repatriation back to Africa and building that in the 1919. What? And so it became problematic. And so when he started saying, not only are we going to repatriate, I'm going to get some a ship line. He went and formed the Black Star Line. And these white people lost their minds because he was not talking. He was getting ready to make that thing happen. And so they said there may have been the business may have been messy because maybe he was overwhelmed. He didn't know that he was going to get a response, or he wasn't prepared for the response. And he was not a businessman. He was a person. Marcus Garvey was. He was a newspaper editor. He was not a businessman in that sense of with what you have to do to get these ships together. And so he started selling the stock. And when those white people saw he was getting the ships, I think they were like, oh my God, this fool is really going to take our African American labor. And they were like, we're not going to do it. So they wrongfully accused him of fraud by selling stock in the Black Star Line. And they threw him in jail. And I think he was eventually sent to, I don't think I got all that information because I got caught up. I got caught all the way up when I started saying, wait a minute, Garvey, how long did he go to? He was, I think he went to, let's see, he was found guilty. Let's see, they didn't really say what was he. Oh, he was deported. Let's see, he was deported from the United States in 1927 and was convicted of mail fraud in 1923 and 1927. And then he was kicked out of the country. And I think he went to Europe. He spent 5 years in prison and before his sentence was commuted by President Coolidge. And so anyway, that's what happened. But I also want to add that he was pardoned in 2025, this year, posthumously by Joe Biden. And the supporters petitioned to overturn the political attack on Marcus Mosiah Garvey because of his family and his supporters. And so he was redeemed. He finally received the justice he deserved, and he wasn't found innocent, but he was pardoned. So that was the best they could do. So give thanks. At least that happened. But our leaders were powerful and we give thanks for them. And hopefully we will continue to model ourselves after them. And, back to Africa movement. Looks like we might be doing that again. We have a lot of people leaving. I got my land. Anyway, Ashe.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So don't they hear you? You can do it if you try.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I know my mom.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can play the drum.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Cia student.